from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. Give us a call, 833-482-5337, 482-5337. Of course, that spells out 833-4-VALDEZ. Happy to be here this Monday night. We're live, we're national. Looking forward to speaking with you guys throughout the evening. We'll be taking your calls on whatever topic we're on in the 10 o'clock hour, the first hour, and in the second hour with our guests. And, of course, in the third hour of the program, you get to dictate how it goes down with open phones across America. Open Phone America, I love it. It's one of my favorites. It's one of the most interactive things on talk radio where you guys get to call in and you chart the course of the program. So I'm looking forward to that. And a happy Monday to everybody. I missed you guys over the weekend. I missed the microphone. It's great to be back. And there's this thing that they say never happens. Well, it happened again. That's right. Democrats were arrested for election fraud after abusing the absentee ballot system. This was reported today. DailyFetch.com. 4 Democrats in Connecticut are facing election fraud charges after they allegedly abused the absentee ballot system in order to affect the Democratic primary. Wow, mira para allá. Who would have thunk it? One of the Democrat campaigners had previously been involved in a scandal that forced a rematch of a mayoral election. Among those charged for unlawful possession of absentee ballots included Bridgeport City Councilman Alfredo Castillo, a Democrat, as well as a Democrat Town Committee Vice Chair Wanda Gator-Patke, as well as 2 other campaign workers, Nilsa Heredia and Josephine Edmonds. This is according to the Associated Press. The Democrats allegedly manipulated the absentee ballot system during the city's 2019 Democrat primary, in which Joe Ganim, the incumbent mayor, defeated State Senator Marilyn Moore by only 270 votes. Ms. Jeter-Patke, Ms. Heredia, and Edmonds were also charged with tampering with a witness during the investigation. That's according to Fox News. Now, Jeter-Patke was accused of failing to sign in as an assister on absentee ballot applications, which were filled out on behalf of a voter. Mr. Castillo, Councilman Castillo, was accused of misrepresenting eligibility requirements for voting by absentee and failing to sign in as an assister himself. Of the 4, you've got the 2 campaign aides are not smiling in their mugshots. However, Ms. Patke and Councilman Castillo smiling with a grin from ear to ear. They're incredibly happy to have been arrested for ballot fraud. Now, Ms. Jeter-Patke, Mr. Castillo, Ms. Heredia, and Ms. Ganim were supporters, while Edmonds is believed to have supported the other candidate. Now, Ms. Patke was also involved in a scandal involving absentee ballots, ultimately leading to the rematch of the 2023 mayoral race. Surveillance videos showed people stuffing absentee ballots into collection boxes during the Democrat primary, one of which was allegedly Ms. Patke. However, she exercised her Fifth Amendment right, declined to answer questions, and just denied everything in the video. And let's see what they said here. It says, whether it's people accused from the Moore campaign or my campaign, any irregularity is acceptable, said Mr. Ganim in a statement after the arrests were announced. We all agree that the integrity of the voting process is vital to our democracy. Ms. Edmonds has been on Moore's campaign payroll since 2019. Yep. Moore said she was disappointed that someone on her campaign payroll had been accused of voter fraud, saying, quote, I ran on integrity. I also ran on integrity for my Senate campaign. That's what I tried to foster, integrity in all campaigns, she said in an interview. That I had a person doing the opposite bothers me, especially knowing who I am, knowing that I don't cut corners or anything else. So that is how it went down in Connecticut. Again, all Democrats, not a single Republican. Now, for those of you listening thinking, oh, Rich, stop drinking the Republican Kool-Aid. No, I'm not. I don't necessarily consider myself a Republican. You know that. You know that my angle here is that of a conservative. That's my belief. That's my view. I think conservative politics, in particular being a constitutional conservative, is really where I land. On some issues, I'm more libertarian. But that's where we're at. The day that the Democrat Party is the party that's for lower taxes and gives people more power, parents more power in education, and is for small government, I'm all for the Democrats the day that happens. It just hasn't happened yet. Right now, they're the party of voter fraud, the party of racism, the party that promotes DEI, the party that allows borders to be open and likes to lie in your face. And who wants to be down with that? And it's because of that I believe Joe Biden is losing so much support from African-American voters. Joe Biden is doing so bad that the data analyst at CNN, Harry Enton, this guy is lost. He doesn't know what to do. He's stunned. He is lost for words. Listen to this.
So where does the race stand among African-American voters right now?
Yeah, I keep looking for this to change, to go back to a historical norm, and it simply put has not yet. So this is the margin, or Biden and Trump among black voters, compare where we were at this point in 2020, compare where we are now. You know, at this point, look at this. In 2020, Joe Biden was getting 86% of the African-American vote. Look at where it is now. It's 70%. That's a 16-point drop, John. And more than that, it's not just that Joe Biden is losing ground, it's that Donald Trump is gaining ground. You go from 7%, single digits at this point in 2020, to now 21%. And again, John, I keep looking for signs that this is going to go back to normal, and I don't see it yet in the polling. If anything, right now we're careening towards a historic performance for a Republican presidential candidate, the likes of which we have not seen in 6 decades.
Wow. Ay bendito, Joe El Baboso Biden is losing support from the biggest part of his base, African Americans. I'd say unions are probably right behind that. And it's sad for Biden, but great news for America. This is when I ask all of our guests, do you think that things are going to get better? Do you think it gets worse? Do you think we're at the edge of the precipice of losing our country? I can tell you, we're not, right? This is a good sign when people, especially the most trusted voting bloc of the Democrat Party, are jumping ship, and they're saying, Joe El Baboso Biden, you are a fake, you are a phony, you are a fraud. Good. I'm glad that's happening. Now, Harry Enton went on.
So I decided to dive deeper into the crosstabs, figure out where is it that Joe Biden is truly struggling among black voters. All right, so this is black voters, Biden versus Trump margin. Look at black voters age 50 and older, and you'll see, look, Joe Biden was leading amongst this group at this point by 83 points back in 2020. Now it's 74 points. So, yeah, a slight decline in that margin, but nothing out of this world. Look at black voters under the age of 50. Holy cow, folks. Holy cow. Look at this. Joe Biden was up by 80 points among this group back at this point in 2020. Look at where that margin has careened down towards. It's now just, get this, 37 points. That lead has dropped by more than half, Mr. Berman. I just never seen anything like this. I'm like speechless, because you always look at history and you go, okay, this is a historic moment. If this polling is anywhere near correct, we are looking at a historic moment right now where black voters under the age of 50, which have historically been such a big part of the Democratic coalition, are leaving it in droves.
Now, El Trompito in his campaign, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, El Presidente, Donald J. Trump, they would say that they are working very hard to attract African-American voters. I would say it's a little bit of both, to be very fair and to be very frank. Trump gave them an option and said, hey, look, what have you got to lose? And he's 100% right. But goodness, Joe Biden absolutely is destroying the Democrat Party. He's destroying the establishment that they have with black voters that they've had for decades and decades. Like Harry Enton from CNN pointed out, for 6 decades, they've dominated in this area, and they are losing. Why? Because Joe, as I like to call him, El Baboso Biden, is an absolute failure. He's a failure on the economy. He's a failure when it comes especially to inflation. He's a failure on immigration. He's a failure when it comes to, you name the issue, he's not winning. Foreign policy, the economy. I have to say that one twice because I think people aren't necessarily starving and on the bread line. Let me be frank here, right? I think there have been some people that are doing better, very few, but some people that have a better job now that got a raise. I know a handful of people that got a raise and are doing better in the years that Biden was in office. However, I don't think any of us could attribute that to Biden or any of his policies. In fact, I think this is really just a testament to the people I know and their work ethic. That's really it, bottom line. Because ultimately, everybody else, and you have to look at the majority, everyone else is not doing better. And the age-old question of, are you doing better today than you were 4 years ago? I think by and large, everybody's saying, oh, hell no. And that's exactly why you've got many voters, not the least of which are African-American voters, that are saying no thank you to Joe El Baboso Biden. So stick around, folks. We're going to continue. I want to talk about this fundraiser that occurred over the weekend in Hollywood. Jimmy Kimmel facilitated an interview with President Obama and President Biden. I'm thinking, man, how come nobody calls on me to do an interview in a big arena like that with President Trump and President whomever, right? I would love to do something like that. But anyway, that's what they were doing in Hollywood. They raised something shy of $30 million. Not too shabby, but nothing close to what the Trump campaign is bringing in just yet. And we're going to get to that. We're going to talk about that and a couple of other things about Joe Biden being a fake, a phony, and a fraud with our buddy Lee Smith. He's the other Puerto Rican conservative. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
We had the spectacle of the nominee of one of the two major parties sitting in court and being convicted by a jury of his peers on 34 counts. What I would say, and what I do say to a bunch of good people out there who are conservatively predisposed, who may not agree with everything that Joe or I or other Democrats stand for, is that there was a time when we had certain core values that we agreed with.
That, of course, is former President Obama. And this morning, I got a call from my friends at Newsmax, and they wanted me to come on and comment on Obama's comments at this fundraiser where he did a on-stage interview at some big theater with Joe El Baboso Biden. Now, not only did they do that, it was facilitated by Jimmy Kimmel. I think Julia Roberts was there. There was a bunch of Hollywood star power there, bringing in just under $30 million or $28 million for the Biden campaign. And Obama was just railing against Trump and going on and how you got to vote for this guy who doesn't know if he's coming or going because Trump is the bad guy, right? El malo, in his opinion. But the reality is people, as we just discussed, black people in particular, are jumping ship. They don't like what the Democrats have to offer. And the big moment here with Joe and Obama was at the end when they were, given their little standing ovation and they were waving and smiling, and Joe got stuck. He had one of those absence seizures. I'm going to call it an absence seizure because that's what my dad used to have. He had a traumatic brain injury, and every now and again he would get stuck, sometimes smiling, sometimes with a serious face, 30 seconds, a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and he would just get stuck, and I'd have to kind of tap on him and guide him and redirect him, and that's exactly what President Obama did. He grabbed him by the wrist and then put his arm around his shoulder and guided him off stage in a very non-suspecting way, but you can tell. And it was a real shame to see that, honestly, because it gave me flashbacks of my old man. But I can tell you that my old man shouldn't have been president. My old man should not have had the nuclear codes. My old man should not have been the commander-in-chief because he was there sometimes, but he wasn't there all the time. And this country deserves better, and we need more. So I want to get some reaction to that and everything else that's going on with this Obama shadow presidency with Lee Smith. Now, you know Lee Smith. He is a journalist. He's an author. You've seen his stuff in The Tablet and so many other publications. He's the author of the book, The Plot Against the President, the true story of how Congressman Devin Nunes uncovered the biggest political scandal in U.S. history. And there's a movie by the same title. Lee Smith, my brother from another, who was also born in Puerto Rico. Welcome to the program.
Rich, thank you so much for inviting me on tonight. It's always a huge thrill and pleasure to get a chance to speak to you.
My pleasure. I'm happy that you accepted the invitation and you're here. Thanks for staying up late. Now, this Obama stuff, did you see this incident that I'm talking about where he was ushered off the stage by Obama and Biden was kind of like in tow?
Yeah. First, I want to say, Rich, you were telling that story about your father, which is really sad, man. I'm very sorry to hear it.
Thank you.
And that's terrible.
It is terrible. And I got to say, I see so many similarities from the rigidity, from the shuffling, the stooped posture, even the similarity in their gait. And I just can't see how people trust Joe Biden because, I mean, I love my dad, but I wouldn't trust him to be president.
Yeah. Well, that's a crucial point that you make, right? I mean, you can have sympathy for someone. I'm sorry to say, though, I think at this point, and Joe Biden's tenure as president, I think a lot of people probably voting against him don't have a lot of sympathy for him at this point. He's done some pretty rotten things to Americans, some of which are still happening, of course, like opening up our borders to millions of illegal aliens who are causing a great amount of suffering around the country. So I think that Joe Biden merits very little sympathy from Americans at this point. So yeah, while it's generally a terrible thing, I think that again, what Joe Biden has been doing is cruel, but I think that the performance staged after that fundraiser in Hollywood, I think it was designed to show, or Obama was keen to show, as he's shown many times before, that he's running the show. Right? It's not Joe Biden, and I think it was important to show it in a Hollywood fundraiser. These are people who are very sensitive to appearances. These are people who don't like, in Hollywood, if you put out a bad movie that bombs, you're going to lose your career and you're going to lose your prestige. You're going to lose friend networks, a whole bunch of different things. So these people don't like to bomb. And the idea that Joe Biden is behind Donald Trump at this point in most polling, I think that people don't want to back a bomb. But the idea that Barack Obama comes out there essentially with a wink saying, "Don't worry, it's me. I'm running it here. You don't have to worry about Joe Biden. It's me. I'm pulling the levers here." And again, Obama's done this quite frequently before, so it's hardly unusual that he did the same thing at this big fundraiser.
So Joe El Baboso Biden is a marionette in many ways, and there's a famous audio clip of Obama saying, if I were to have a third term, I'd like to do it kind of like with a headset in somebody's ear and giving them directions, and it's really funny. And I don't know if we have the audio of that; it's an old clip. But it seemed so obvious in the fundraiser over the weekend. Folks, we're coming right back with Lee Smith, journalist and author. He's the author of The Plot Against the President. He's our guest, and he's coming right back. Don't go anywhere. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The next president is likely to have 2 new Supreme Court nominees. 2 more. He's already appointed 2 that have been very negative in terms of the rights of individuals. The Supreme Court has never been as out of kilter as it is today. I mean, never. I taught constitutional law for 9 years. This guy knows more about it than most. Look, the fact of the matter is that this has never been a court that's been this far out of step.
That is Joel Baboso Biden at the fundraiser in Hollywood last night, or Saturday rather. And he says, we've never had a Supreme Court that's that far out of step. I'm guessing that's something that Barack Hussein Obama told him to say. Our guest is Lee Smith. Lee Smith, what do you think?
I mean, Biden taught constitutional law for 9 years. I mean, again, it's just the idea. He just piles it on, and it's just. I want to say shameless, but it goes far beyond that. But look, it's indicative of something else. Before the break, Rich, you asked me about what was going on and Obama leading Biden off stage. I think what we're seeing a massive campaign of demoralization here, right? This is what's going on, and this is old time Soviet stuff, right? Old time Soviet trickery. It's not just the lies. It's not just the nonsense that's easily checked. And of course, a responsible press corps would say, look, the president, we all voted for him, but the president has to come out and he has to tell the truth, and he's just making stuff up, and this isn't right for the country. It's not right for anyone. But of course, the press won't do that. But look, the bigger thing is this. When Obama walks out there and he's leading Biden off stage, and he's messaging that he's really in control, what's the big picture? The big picture is that the real power, the real levers of government are being pulled by someone else. Someone unseen and someone unaccountable. And you Americans have to accommodate yourselves to the new reality. And the new reality is this. You have no sovereignty. You have no say over the direction of your country. Finally, you have no say over your communities, and perhaps not even your families or yourselves anymore. That's the bigger message. This is the message of sick regimes, whether we're talking about communist regimes, whether we're talking about authentically fascist regimes. This is the message. You people have no control over your lives. The big levers, the big decisions are all being made elsewhere. And if you don't like them, tough. You have to live with it. That's the very dark message being sent here.
And it really is a dark message when you put it that way, and you kind of juxtapose it with the regimes of these autocratic communist types. So whether it's Putin or our friends just south of Miami in Cuba,
yeah, right.
It's a scary prospect, right? I've never ever met anybody. I have not. Some people I know amongst us, there are some pro-Putin patriots that are like, oh, things in Russia are fantastic. But I've never met somebody coming from Cuba telling me, oh, my gosh, it's terrific. And honestly, the amount of Russians that I met growing up in Brooklyn and Brighton Beach, they didn't like Russia either because it was so corrupt and it was just so crazy. And the fact that Putin wins every election almost unopposed. So I look at that and I think that is a scary prospect to think that the United States is just as bad or at least on track to become that. What do Americans do, Lee Smith?
Well, I don't think the United States is on track. I think that our ruling party is already there. I mean, its ambitions are clearly totalitarian, right? It wants to insert itself into every part of American life. But I don't think Americans are like that at all. And here's what worries me, Rich.
I agree.
The people that you're talking about who talk about, oh, yeah, things are better in Russia. Or, I admire Putin. He's a strong man. Or Putin's a strong ally of the Russian Orthodox Church. These are people who have been broken, right? And this is what the purpose of the regime sending these messages. You have no control over your life, right? The purpose is to break people and to prey on them like this, to have people say, "Look, can we imagine a more beneficial message for the Obama faction than, yes, I've come to hate my country. I actually think that Putin's Russia is a better place than America," right? So that's the purpose. It's to hurt Americans who are already wondering, right? Who are hurting because of the policies of Biden, because of what Obama did to this country. Americans are hurting, and they want answers, right? They want to know what's happening. And here's Obama saying, "You have no response. You have no control over this country." So what do people do? They lose their minds, right? They're broken. We need people to. Of course, most Americans are rich. and definitely the people who listen to your show are. They're like, no, I love my country, and I see the problems my country is going through right now, and I can name the people who are guiding our great country in the wrong direction. But to turn and go, oh, yeah, I prefer Vladimir Putin's Russia, or, well, at least the Chinese have an orderly way of doing things. Or, Rich, I don't know, you and some other people may have a problem with Cuba, but the health system in Cuba is fantastic, I hear.
And literacy rates.
Exactly, literacy rates, right? Literacy rates in dentistry in Cuba, right? So, but this is part of this. What I'm talking about, part of the campaign of demoralization, and this is what they're doing. Right? It's intentional what they're doing to tell people that to tell Americans they have no control over their country anymore. Decisions are being made elsewhere, and it's meant to demoralize us and drive us crazy. So we have these entirely twisted and sick beliefs. Like Vladimir Putin is somehow Vladimir Putin is somehow an exemplary leader of a great world power. It's terrible.
Yeah, it really is. And let me ask you, just to circle back to the audio clip we played, what are your thoughts on Biden, his thoughts saying that the next president will likely have 2 Supreme Court nominees, and this whole election hinges on that?
Yeah. Well, what is he getting at? I mean, I see different people talking about, I see the idea that they're going to put a lot of pressure on. They're putting a lot of pressure on Samuel Alito now. I believe they're putting a lot of pressure on Clarence Thomas as well. So I guess it seems to have a lot to do with that. And, we see the kind of pressures they're already putting on the court. I think that, I've seen some speculation on social media. This may have to do with the Supreme Court decision regarding a lot of these January 6th prosecutions, whether Jack Smith should have been able to use this obstruction count on January 6th defendants, as well as Donald Trump. It may have something to do with that. It may also have something to do with, as I've seen other people speculate, it may have something to do with the election being contested and it reaching the Supreme Court, and you want to run down the conservative justices as soon as possible to delegitimize them. So I think there's a whole bunch of different things going on with what Biden's saying.
Well, I appreciate the analysis, Lee Smith. I want you to stick with us, and I want to come back and discuss a piece that you recently wrote on Thomas Massie, discussing a secret conspiracy. And I think it's an important topic to discuss. So, folks, keep it locked right here. We're coming right back with Lee Smith. Check him out at Lee Smith DC on the social media, or you can go to his locals page at leesmith.locals.com. Don't go anywhere. Coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you worked so hard in the industry, and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
He spent more in the omnibus than Nancy Pelosi spent. He's violated the 72-hour rule. He reauthorized warrantless spying, in fact, expanded that program. And now he's going for the Kentucky Derby's May 4th. I got to use an analogy here. He's going for the trifecta, the Triple Crown. He is going to pass the Ukraine bill that most Republicans in America are against.
That is Congressman Thomas Massie just over a month ago, and he's from Kentucky. He was criticizing Speaker Johnson in that clip and the funding for Ukraine, and now he's being critical of the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, saying it's like your babysitter. I want to get to the bottom of what Thomas Massie said, and we've got Lee Smith. Lee Smith is an author and journalist, and he's with us now. Lee Smith, tell us more about your piece on Thomas Massie.
Hey, Rich, first of all, I got to say, he's there talking about the Kentucky Derby. My grandfather, a great Puerto Rican, his horse won the Kentucky Derby in 1976.
Wow.
It was great for
what was the name of the horse?
Great for Bold Forbes, and the jockey was Junior Cordero, who was an old family friend. Yeah, an old family friend. So he started his career at Comandante and then won at Churchill Downs in 1976. So I heard Kentucky Derby. Whenever I hear Kentucky Derby, whenever I hear Kentucky Derby, I gotta boast on my my late great my grandfather.
Yeah, your Puerto Rican cred. Cool.
That's right. So look, Representative Massey is a very interesting guy. He's done a lot of good things. But he gave an interview recently where we started talking about, as you said, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, and he started talking about how AIPAC has babysitters for all Republican legislators. Now, this was an entirely unfair representation because as Representative Massey, who has served several terms in Congress now, I believe he's been there since 2013, he knows how Washington lobbies work, right? Powerful Washington lobbies, even not very powerful Washington lobbies like AIPAC is not as powerful as many think. What they do is their members who are constituents of representatives and senators, they are in contact with them to press them, to plead them, to fight for their cause. This is part of the American political system. We may not like lobbying, but everyone's entitled to it. It's part of our system right now. And the idea that Representative Massey singled out a predominantly Jewish organization, I think is pretty rotten, right? There are other organizations that also lobby on behalf of the American-Israel relationship, including CUFI, Christians United for Israel, which is a much larger and much more powerful organization than AIPAC, and that is predominantly an evangelical organization. So, what is the problem here precisely with Mr. Massey, Representative Massey, singling out AIPAC as a unique problem in Washington? When again, the representative knows how lobbying works. American citizens are entitled to lobby, to petition lawmakers on behalf of their interests. So I thought this was very bad, Rich, and to circle around what we were talking about before, if we're going to start talking about how there are secret conspiracies here going in Washington about people who really control real power in Washington, there are many societies that have come up with that same answer, that secretly it's the Jews who run our society, right? That has ended well for no society, right? Yeah. So the idea, again, there are a lot of people out there. There are a lot of people out there who are preying on hurt Americans, and some of them are on the left, and unfortunately, we have some on the right as well. And the way to help Americans, the way to talk to Americans, I think, is not to talk about secret conspiracies being run in dark corners of Washington, D.C., when, again, the lobbying process is very open and everyone knows how it works. Again, we might not like different causes that people are lobbying for, right, whether that's the NRA or whether it's AIPAC or whether it's the AARP or whatever it is. But the fact is, it's part of the American political system. And Representative Massey didn't do well by look, I'm not here to defend AIPAC. I think that speaking out against this is defending America, making sure that people understand what our real problems are, and our real problems are right in front of us. It happens to be the ruling regime. Again, it's not dirty deals run out of a lobby in Washington that operates like every other Washington organization.
Got it. But, what's interesting is that you've got a lot of folks in Congress from what some have called the Hamas wing of the party that love to attack AIPAC as well. And I'm talking about the progressive wing. That's the, the ones birthed by Bernie Sanders, AOC, Cori Bush, Ilhan Omar, and whatnot. And as of late, Jamal Bowman. And I've got a clip of Bowman. I want you to listen to this.
Do you consider the phrase "from the river to the sea" hate speech and or advocating for the eradication of the state of Israel?
Congressman Bowman, let's get your take.
I know some do, others don't. I do not.
Now, that's Bowman, and he went on to talk about AIPAC in another clip that we've got. For the sake of time, we're not going to get to it. But I'm just curious, is it yet another lobby, Lee Smith, that is lobbying against AIPAC that is causing all of this media attention?
Well, I mean, I don't see they're lobbying against AIPAC. Look, here's the dirty secret about AIPAC, that AIPAC wants everyone to think that they have lots and lots of power, right? In fact, the power belongs to the American people. The American people, for all sorts of reasons, love Israel, right? Because we recognize another covenantal nation. We recognize that the Jews and Israel are important in American history, going back to the founding of our country, because we respect the country that respects itself the way Americans do, the way that we honor our history, the way that we honor our flag. We look at these, we say, yeah, they do too. So it's Americans love Israel naturally, right? It's not because of AIPAC. It's not because of any lobby. It's not because of people pushing interest. And you see that's why Representative Bowman is in trouble right now. And this is one of the reasons in his primary. And this is one of the reasons why the different figures in Congress you're talking about are looked upon by most Americans as nasty, vicious people supporting vicious causes. I mean, Rich, both of us as native New Yorkers, I mean, we have to be appalled to see what's been going on in our once great city that we hope recovers as soon as possible. Yeah. But less than 25 years after 9/11, I mean, we have these animals taking over our streets, hanging up Palestinian flags where the American flag belongs, going around threatening Jews, beating up Jews, threatening store owners. This is
going
a terrible
on subways.
thing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Going on subways, wanting to call out Jews. Oh, yeah, if you're a Jew or if you're a Zionist, you have to get out of here. This is not the way we want to see our city going. This is not the way we want to see our country going. This is not what this is precisely against the American mainstream. Right?
Lee Smith, let everybody know where they can go to find your work.
Thank you, Rich, for saying that. LeeSmith.locals.com. I'll be doing some more stuff this week. I hope people will follow. And, of course, on Truth Social, at Lee Smith, and then over at Twitter, too, at Lee Smith, D.C. Rich, I want to thank you again so much for bringing me on tonight.
My pleasure. And, last time you were here, you were talking about some spies that were Iranian spies that were working in Washington. Yeah. And I want to get an update on that the next time we have you back. Because I know that continues to develop. Folks, Lee Smith, check him out at Lee Smith on Truth, at Lee Smith DC on Twitter, and don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. Lee Smith, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thanks for being here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. We continue our conversation in the next hour. We got Charlie Kirk coming up. Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA. He's got a brand new book called Right-Wing Revolution, How to Beat the Woke and Save the West. And then after that, we're going to have some discussion on some comments recently made by Congressman Byron Donalds. As you know, I've got a whisper campaign going for Congressman Byron Donalds to be the VP. Nobody agrees with me. I feel like nobody agrees with me, or not enough people agree with me, because that would cause President Trump to potentially forfeit electoral college votes from Florida. But I think it's well worth it because that's the type of fighter you need. 2 New Yorkers transplanted into Florida. This guy, Byron Donalds, he's from Brooklyn like me. He's a fighter. He's the right guy. Anyway, we're going to talk about his comments and, of course, Charlie Kirk's book coming up and the news of the day. Then Open Phone America in hour number 3. And you know the number, 833-4-VALDEZ. So keep it locked right here, folks. I am Rich Valdez. Hour number 2 is underway. Do not move a muscle. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you. Hour number 2, Monday night program. We're live, we're national. The phone number is 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. And over the weekend, Joe Biden was doing a fundraiser with former President Barack Obama. Jimmy Kimmel was there. There was a bunch of Hollywood star power, a lot of elites there. And he seemed to start gazing off into all the stars that were there and got lost in it, right? He was a little starstruck for a minute, had to be guided off the stage by President Obama. We're going to get into that and your calls on that shortly. Maybe in the next segment, we'll do some calls. 833-4-VALDEZ. Something else I want to talk about is The Economist. The publication, The Economist, gives Trump a 75% chance of winning the 2024 election. Those are some pretty good odds. If I was a betting man, I might become a betting man because of those odds, thanks to The Economist. And something else I wanted to play for you before we jump in is this clip that we have on immigration. Immigration continues to be a huge problem, and it was a problem globally. Well, a couple of months ago when I was in Budapest for the CPAC conference, that was the issue of the day. And we just saw in the European elections for Parliament, that was still one of the main issues, with Green Party losing a bunch of seats and center-right politicians picking up some seats. And the contention is that those on the center-right, the right wing, are picking up some speed and some steam because of immigration. Listen to this.
And new this morning, multiple sources familiar with the White House's plans tell NBC News that President Biden is set to take executive action as early as Tuesday to protect hundreds of thousands of undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens from deportation.
So now, as if we didn't know what happens in Europe and all these other places where they've seen the detriment of massive illegal immigration, Joe Biden seems to want to continue to add insult to injury. This is only going to hurt the United States, and overall it's going to hurt the West. And to talk about the overall effect of everything that's going on, I want to talk to Charlie Kirk. He's the founder and president of Turning Point USA, and he's the author of a brand new book by 45 Books. Big shout out to our buddy Sergio Gore. The book is called Right Wing Revolution: How to Beat the Woke and Save the West. Charlie Kirk, welcome back, sir.
Thanks so much. Big fan. Your impact is really big. Honored to be here.
Oh, thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man. So let's talk about the book, because you always kick ass with the books, honestly. The last one you wrote on the college scam, it was really in-depth. You did your thing with it, and I think it's a conversation that Americans want to have, and this is one that Americans are already having, right? People realize that we have to not only save America, we have to save the West. Tell us more.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's out actually today. People can order it at 45books.com. That's 45books.com. And look, the whole idea is that we're up against an existential threat, and that threat is within. We call it the woke. We define what the woke is. And in short, it is complain until you control. That is what the woke is. So keep on complaining until you control the civilization. And they're very, very good at it. But it's even more pernicious than that and a greater threat than that. What they've been able to do is take over the FBI, take over the Department of Justice, take over Google, take over the biggest institutions in our country. And we put together a blueprint, a battle plan of how decent people can fight. We start with the micro, where you can actually fight, and then the macro, where we can where we talk about the country at large, what public policy, what executive orders, what individual things that we need to do to actually fight and win. So this is a very timely book, as right now we're seeing so many different things happening in the country, and the stakes have never been higher. So we're really thrilled with the success so far. And again, it's 45books.com. That's 45books.com.
All right, amigos, the book is Right Wing Revolution: How to Beat the Woke and Save the West. Now, Charlie Kirk, when you decided to write this book, And obviously, you've got a lot to say. You're all over the internet, on the radio, with your conferences. You're doing a lot, especially for young people. But when you decided to write this book, what was the key message you had in mind?
Well, first and foremost, it's challenging people to do more and to fight more and to be better. Right now, we're seeing a lot of people that are wondering what they can do to actually retake the country. And in the book, Right Wing Revolution, I articulate specifics and challenge the reader. It's very readable, and it's incredibly wide-reaching. It has details that I've never put before in books. It also, in any of my previous books, it also has personal stories of how I was trying to get Kerry Lake elected in 2022 and how we were ultimately unsuccessful, how that ended up being really important in my development in trying to now put forward Turning Point Action in our ballot chasing program. You know, these are individual stories that I talk about, and you're right, we do a lot at Turning Point, and I host a national radio show and podcast and all that, and people say, Charlie, how do you juggle it all? I talk about that in the book as well, some life advice, if you will. I'm only 30 years old, but we talk about how we need to turn around the declining birth rates, about how we need to revitalize the American spirit, how we need to increase church attendance and get to a country where you can feel comfortable leaving your doors unlocked. And right now we are seeing a form of a right-wing revolution happening across the West. We're seeing it in France. We're seeing it in Belgium. We're seeing it in the Netherlands. We're seeing it in Germany. And the United States has always been the lone beacon of freedom and sensibility in this chaotic world. But we are under threat and attack from this lethal and this pernicious virus, this ideology that has infested the entire civilization. And it's time for us to recenter our bearings, and that is what the call to action is in the right-wing revolution.
Folks, Right Wing Revolution, How to Beat the Woke and Save the West is the book. Check it out at 45books.com. That's 45books.com. Charlie Kirk, I love it. I love what you're talking about. I love what you're doing. And this is something I think, as a conservative activist, I think everybody has to do more. We all need to do more. But that's always the question. People always feel kind of sequestered to this imaginary box that they have, where they think, you know what, well, I'm retired, or I'm this, or I'm that, or I'm just 18. I'm just lowly old me. What can I do? How can I do it? What's your message to that person?
Well, and that's what the book really goes after. And we talk about how every single citizen can play a big role. We talk about how every single person is able to use their agency to improve the country materially. And it starts with the individual. It starts with you. It starts with, believe it or not, changing your diet, losing weight. I talk about in this book how I was 50 pounds heavier a year and a half ago, and what I did to solve that, and how I'm more productive. I have more energy, and I'm able to do more. And you might say, oh, what does a weight loss message have to do with saving the country? A lot. I mean, if you want to be a healthy person, if you want to be the full citizen, not just a slave or a subject is a better word, then you need to be uncontrollable by the federal government. And that includes your health, and that also includes where you purchase your food, and it includes the currency that you use, from cryptocurrency, and not allowing the government have monopoly on your money. We talk about all this in Right Wing Revolution. It's a comprehensive book, and it's really an agenda for national revitalization. It's an agenda to get our people and this country back into gear, because we have drifted leftward in a terrible, bitter Marxist direction. And I go through it in great detail. Also in the book, again, there's so much. I talk about how Donald Trump on day one, God willing, he becomes president, what he can do on day one. What can he actually do? What executive orders can he sign? What can he do to save the country and to really restrain the flow of illegals on the southern border, to rein in the administrative state and the federal Leviathan? So included there is also a punch list of what we want the federal government to do, and also what states can do. So it's very comprehensive. I will say this: if people buy it, you will learn a lot. It is full of data. It is hopeful. It's inspiring. We also talk about how the conservative movement, we tend to believe that we're always in decline and how we're in this doom loop. Mm-hmm. But no, we actually have a lot to celebrate. We have the Second Amendment is in a better place than it was 20 years ago. The fight for life, I'm very pro-life, is in a better place than it was 20 years ago. The courts are in a better place than it was 20 years ago. We control more governor's mansions and more attorneys general positions across the country than we did 20 years ago. If you don't know these things, then you've been kind of in a doom loop, and we paint an optimistic, forward-thinking positive agenda, and we say that, hey, look, not everything we're winning on. There's plenty of things that we've lost in the last 20 years, but there's things we've won, things we can learn from, and the threat right now is wokeism. The threat is within, and to defeat this enemy, we need a right-wing revolution. People can find it at 45books.com.
The book is Right Wing Revolution, How to Beat the Woke and Save the West. You know how I do. If I like the book, I say get 2 copies, one for yourself, one to give away. Get on there now. Do the pre-order. This ships tomorrow. 45books.com, 45books.com. That's the numbers, 45books, BOOKS.com. Now, Charlie Kirk, in the 2 minutes that we have remaining, I want to get your take. You mentioned Donald Trump on day one, and I want to get your take on how this election cycle unfolds. We've got all sorts of moving parts. People are predicting Biden won't be the candidate. I feel like it's a little late for that, but you never know if there's a surprise at the Democrat convention. We've got Trump securing the nomination earlier than ever. And it seems to be a very atypical election year, with every poll that I could think of saying that the Republican nominee is in the best position to win, and which makes sense to me, but I'm always prepared for the worst. How do you see this unfolding?
Yeah, look, I the 50-50 shot. Ignore the polls and do the work, and that's what we're doing every day at Turning Point Action. The work is registering voters and chasing ballots, and I'll tell you, they might pull Biden. I think it's a very interesting story. I have been, no, they're not going to pull him, no, they're not going to pull him, but there's a new Daily Mail story, which is very well sourced, from Charlie Sperling. He's a very serious, very thoughtful reporter for the Daily Mail. He's legit. Like, that's not tabloid stuff. That's real smart stuff. And I read this story and I said, boy, that he just wouldn't just put it up if he didn't have good sourcing. And so they're saying that the Obamas and the Schumers and the Pelosi, kind of the crime families of the Democrat oligarchy, are combining forces to try to remove Joe Biden. That could be possible. Boy, what a mess that would be. He would have to want to do it, or he'd have to relinquish control. What that would look like, the convention, it's already going to be chaotic in Chicago with all the October 7th kind of fallout and all the Muslim protests associated with that. Mm-hmm. So what a time. I'll tell you, here's my message. Donald Trump is stronger than ever, so let's go register new voters. Everybody listening, you need to go register new low-propensity voters. You need to find them. You need to bring them on the voter rolls. You need to do the work and get into the streets and ignore the noise, and then Donald Trump could be ultimately successful. I don't believe The Economist, 78% chance. That's nonsense. Go do the work. We have a 50-50 chance to save this country. It's going to require a full-out effort, which is also exactly what I talk about in the book.
All of the Valdez VIPs that are listening, amigos, the book is Right Wing Revolution, How to Beat the Woke and Save the West. Make sure you get 2 copies of this, one for yourself, one to give away. Charlie Kirk, let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with the work that you're doing overall.
They can follow us on social media. It's charliekirk.com, but the biggest call to action right now is buy the book if you can, 45books.com. It's our big push. I think it'll be really worthwhile, and Sergio does a great job of running 45 Books. Super thrilled to be working with him. He is the president's publisher, and so it's the same company. So we're really doing a great work here, and I think people will gain a lot of knowledge, some wisdom, and a battle plan to be able to beat these bad guys so we can take back our country.
Charlie Kirk, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thanks for staying up late with us. Good luck with the book. Godspeed.
Thanks so much. God bless. Thank you.
You bet. All right, amigos, we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
Why can't these justices be hauled before the Senate? I mean, they could be subpoenaed. You've made the point, just for everybody to understand, that would require 60 votes in the Senate for the subpoena to be enforced. What else could be done that isn't being done?
Well, they could be brought over to the Senate with a Democratic majority, except they would need 60 votes in order to enforce the subpoena. The real problem is that there's no binding ethics code on the Supreme Court. So the highest court in the land has the lowest ethical standards. They're the only judges in America that don't have a binding ethics code applied to them. So, we're working on a lot of legislation that we hope we'll be able to get through in the next Congress that would establish an inspector general over in the Supreme Court, which would probably clean things up rather quickly, create a binding ethics code.
So Saturday night, Joe El Baboso Biden is on stage, and he's saying that the Supreme Court, this is the most important election because the next president's going to get to appoint 2 Supreme Court justices. And the very next day, Jen Psaki and her sidekick, Congressman Jamie Raskin from Maryland, they're on MSNBC saying, why can't justices be hauled before the Senate? Now, of course, they can be, and they point that out so aptly, right? That if they have 60 votes, they can. But let's think about this for a second. A, what is the purpose of this statement, Jen Psaki? Silent P, of course. What is the purpose? Well, the purpose here is to interfere in the court. They don't like the court. So last election, they were saying we need to stack the court, right? With make it 13 or 15 or whatever number they want so that they could have a majority and then get the outcomes that they're looking for by stacking the court. Since that's not happening, now they want to delegitimize the court, right? And this is always their game. Whenever they have big cases or they see a loss coming or something that they don't like coming from the Supreme Court, right away they delegitimize the court. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Clarence Thomas is a crook. He takes too many vacations. Alito flies flags upside down. El tipo es un loco, right? The guys are crazy. This is lunacy. Now, why do we have a Supreme Court? What is the purpose of this court? Well, it was established in the Constitution, and it gives way for all the other courts to exist. Now, by way of Congress, of course. But the first sentence of Article 3, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution says the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court. And it goes on to say, and in such inferior courts as Congress may, from time to time, ordain and establish. Now, we need a Supreme Court, or at least we have a Supreme Court, because it was, I'm going to use the word decreed in the Constitution. I didn't want to use that word, but that's the one that came to mind. So now we have this court that has to exist, right? And it's led by the Chief Justice of the United States and his colleagues, associate justices of the Supreme Court of the United States. But again, the Chief Justice is the chief judge of the entire country. This is a very interesting thing because nobody else has that distinction. Now, we have this Supreme Court, and we're supposed to expect that it is going to operate independently from partisan pressure because why? Because the partisan pressure comes when you want to drag justices in front of the Senate, right? I mean, it's clear as day to me. Right? Members of the Supreme Court are appointed by the president, subject to approval of the Senate, to ensure an independent judiciary and to protect these judges from partisan pressures. That's in the Constitution. So everything Jen Psaki is talking about flies in the face of what the founders had in mind for our Supreme Court. Does that surprise you? Of course not. Most Democrats don't like the Constitution. Most Democrats would like to redo the Constitution, do away with it, and create their own living, breathing rules for the United States. Anyway, we continue this a little bit later. I got a lot to say on that. We got a lot more audio to react to. Folks, I am Rich Valdez. We're coming right back with our half hour number 2, the second half of hour number 2. And we're going to talk about Congressman Byron Donalds and a lot more. Don't go anywhere. I am Rich Valdez. Coming right back.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back. We continue our conversation. And Byron Donalds has been under fire lately because he made some remarks recently, and they were taken, I'm going to say, out of context, or at least maybe even willfully taken out of context about how Americans should be talking about the black family's resilience during the Jim Crow era and why family structure is an important issue on the south side of Chicago, as it is a civil rights issue back 60 years ago. And he was recently doing an interview, Joy Reid. We got a clip of that. Listen to this.
During Jim Crow, could your family have existed? You are in an interracial marriage. Your wife is a white conservative activist. Could your family have existed at all during Jim Crow?
No, it could not, Joy, and we all know that. But that's why I am blessed to live in America today as opposed to America during that time. But we cannot ignore the realities of not having fathers in homes. That is important for black people today and all people today as we move forward for a better America.
We are out of time. What I'm grateful for is that we do not live in the Jim Crow era and that fathers do not face the threat of lynching.
I'm very grateful of that.
Perhaps don't bring up Jim Crow when you're trying to make that example. Representative Byron Donalds, thank you for being here.
Well, it's convenient that she ran out of time. That was pretty funny. But I do want to give Joy Reid credit for bringing Byron Donalds on. I know that she oftentimes does not bring on anybody that disagrees with her. And kudos to him for accepting the invitation. Although I think most conservatives would go on MSNBC or CNN if they had the chance. They just don't get invited anymore. To discuss this, unpack it, and talk about the overall issue, the larger issue here of minority families, African-American families, etc., is our guest. And we've had him on before. He's fantastic. His name is Delano Squires. He's a research fellow at the Richard and Helen DeVos Center for Life, Religion, and the Family at the Heritage Foundation. Delano Squires, welcome back, sir.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. So when you hear this clip of Byron Donalds reacting or defending his comments, his initial comments about the black family, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think he's right on the substance in terms of black families were more intact during Jim Crow. In fact, from 1890 through 1950, black men and women were more likely to be married by the age of 35 and got married at younger ages than their white counterparts. So I think there's a lot to be said about, his actual comments. I think another thing that's very obvious is that the left didn't just misinterpret his comments. They twisted them and took them out of context and basically lied about what he said. And they used the word better when, they basically said he said, or he implied that life was better for black folks under Jim Crow than it is now. He never used the word better. He didn't even come close to saying the word better. He was making a factual statement, just like if he said, during the Jim Crow era, gas was cheaper than it is today. That doesn't, people want to infer that as they wouldn't take that as a value statement about Jim Crow. So it's clear that they wanted to push a particular narrative. And I think one of the things, that struck me is that Democrats have no problem invoking Jim Crow to scare black voters into thinking that America in 2024 is no different than America in 1944. But when a conservative references Jim Crow to make a point about the resilience of black families, that's when they get upset. And the truth is, for as much as they talk about history and we're not teaching history in American schools, they have no respect for history. They just want to be able to use history as a weapon in their war, their culture war that they've been waging for the better part of 6 decades.
Delano Squires, now I think I get the idea of why the left would want to contort his comments. But what I find interesting is why would they want to attack, especially a black anchor like Joy Reid, why would she want to attack comments that were honestly pro-black families?
Well, I think, one, many of them probably see Byron Donalds as a threat. Right. Obviously, there are reports that he's being considered as President Trump's vice president nominee. So I think there's a political reason for that. But as I said, I think a big part of it is they want to feel as if they own sort of black history and can use it at their will. So when someone comes along and says, well, actually, the black family is more intact back then than it is now, that's a threat to them, because for them, they like to use history as a scare tactic. I mean, I've heard between Al Sharpton and, representatives from National Urban League, NAACP, the sort of progressive left in general, even President Biden, I've heard them not just talk about Jim Crow. I've heard them talk about James Crow Esquire, Jimmy Crow, Jane Crow, Jim Eagle. All right, and it's always the same point. They want black folks to think that America in 2024 is no different than we were 100 years ago. So I'm not surprised they lied about it, because this is what they do. Same thing with the phony scandal, the quote-unquote Don't Say Gay bill that was about parental rights and education. This is sort of the left. Their native tongue is Linese. So I'm not surprised that they ended up saying things that were untrue in this instance.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me either. Folks, we're on with Delano Squires. Again, he is with the Heritage Foundation, and he's factually unpacking everything that Byron Donalds said, which is remarkable when you look at the history and the data. He's a research fellow at the Richard and Helen DeVos Center for Life, Religion, and the Family. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about how income disparities and all of this racial disparity also reflects patterns in marriage rates. So we're going to talk about that coming back with Delano Squires. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Go to some of the outskirts of Texas. Go to some of the outskirts of Florida. Go to some of the outskirts of various places throughout this country, and you see places that ain't trying to hear all of that. It was the way that it was, and we ain't trying to change it for anybody. We holding on to this, whatever that it may be. And as a result of that, we find ourselves on too many occasions witnessing the conflict that we thought had subsided, that we thought had evaporated before our very eyes. And what we've learned is it has not.
That is Stephen A. Smith. He's referencing the racial divide that's in America with respect to the Caitlin Clark controversy. But this racial divide is what we're talking about. And it's an obvious issue, but one that I feel the left takes out of context and creates into something where, the only obvious part of a racial divide for me is that we are divided by race, but we don't have to be, right? I don't think we actually are per se divided. It's, I think, the left that creates that. Now, there are some disparities with income and marriage rates and things like that. And that's why I want to bring this back to our guest because this is interesting to me. Our guest is Delano Squires. He's a research fellow at the Richard and Helen DeVos Center for Life, Religion, and the Family at the Heritage Foundation. And Delano Squires, tell us a little bit about the most frequently cited racial disparities in income and how that reflects patterns in marriage rates by race.
Sure. So, I think by far people talk most about wealth and income, and according to the Census Bureau, median household income in 2022, I believe, was on average, the median for the entire nation was about $74,000. For Asian American families, it was about $108,000. For white families, it was $81,000. For Hispanic families, it was $63,000. And for black families, it was $53,000. And this is often used to, particularly by the left, to make the case that, this gap, interestingly enough, Rich, the gap is always measured in terms of black-white. But the truth is there is actually a larger gap between or a similar gap between whites and Asians as there is between blacks and whites. But this is used, as prima facie evidence that, okay, we have discrimination in economics and housing and education and so on, criminal justice. But one of the things that I found is that this order, Asian, white, Hispanic, black, this pattern is the exact same order with respect to marriage rates in America today. And particularly the percentage of each group's households that are married couple households. So nationally, it's about 47% of American households are comprised of a married couple. For context, in 1940, it was about 75%. So it's 47% today. For Asian American families, it's about 63% of their families are married couple households. 51% of white households are headed by a married couple. 46% of Hispanic. And for black families in this country, 28% of black households in America are headed by a married couple. So my contention is that what I call marriage inequality, right, that gap in terms of sort of marriage rates and household composition has far more explanatory power than ongoing racial discrimination.
Fascinating stuff. And do you think, or I should say, let me rephrase. I was recently in Budapest, Hungary, and Prime Minister Viktor Orban has a lot of pro-family policies, pro-marriage policies, where he's talking about tax breaks and eliminating income tax for people that are married, and the more kids you have, the less tax you pay. Do you see a future in America where we have a tax policy like that, or is that too much to ask for?
That's a good question. I mean, I know there are some conservative organizations that are looking into that, looking into ways that, government policy can be used to create the types of conditions that make building and maintaining and sustaining healthy families a little easier for people. I want to say there was a representative in Texas who recommended or proposed reducing property taxes for families, married couples who have children, to the point where I think if they had more than 5 children, they wouldn't pay any property tax in the state of Texas. So I do think that there are things that can be done. Some of the examples from Hungary and other countries have yielded limited results. Basically every industrialized nation, except for a handful, is seeing, its total fertility rates come down below replacement, and the United States is no different. But again, I do think there are things that can be done from a policy perspective to incentivize strong families.
Yeah, I would love to see more of that. I just don't know if it actually happens. I feel like so much of the policies we have and from FDR and moving forward from then have actually disincentivized strong families. Do you think that trend will continue?
I hope not, but I think it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that I do still think that that iron triangle, this is what I call it, between particularly low-income single women, particularly low-income single moms, elected officials, and unelected bureaucrats, has been in place for the better part of 60 years. Everyone gets something out of the deal, right? The poor moms are promised, food and clothing and shelter, right? So they're promised financial security from the government, who plays the part of the patriarch. Elected officials get votes because when you are telling people, hey, vote for me and I'll, help you live a more comfortable life for you and your child, that's a very strong incentive. And then unelected bureaucrats, the people who are in human service agencies on the local level, on the federal level, these are the people who manage the poverty economy, and they get job security. because of so many people who have to rely on the government for different types of benefits. So this has been in place for quite some time, and as you said, it created some very, very perverse incentives in our political culture. But I'm hoping this is something that we can come out of in subsequent generations, because I do feel that there is an appetite for sort of a robust pro-marriage, pro-family movement on the conservative right now.
Folks, we're on with Delano Squires from the Heritage Foundation, and when we come back, he's going to tell us a little bit about all of the scholarship that he's working on, all of the great research that he's been doing, and how you could keep up to speed with a lot of that work. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, familia, welcome back. We continue our conversation with Delano Squires from the Heritage Foundation. And Delano Squires, let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with the work that you're doing at the Richard and Helen DeVos Center for Life, Religion, and the Family.
Sure. They can follow me on X, formerly Twitter, at Delano Squires, DELANOSQUIRES. And my articles, my op-eds also go up on my Heritage page. So just the Heritage Foundation, heritage.org, / Delano Squires. And then also, I'm also a contributor to Blaze Media, and I write a weekly column over at the Blaze. So again, if you just Google Delano Squires Blaze, you'll see all the columns I've written there for basically the past 3 years.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Folks, give him a follow. He's a smart guy, and he's talking about stuff that many of us need to know about and not enough of us are talking about. Delano Squires, I appreciate it, sir. You literally are a gentleman and a scholar and a patriot, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me on.
You bet. All right, amigos. Now we're winding down hour number 2, swinging into hour number 3, guns blazing. I want to hear from you guys, the American people. Our phone number, 833-482-5337. It's our late night national town hall conversation. And I haven't talked to you since Friday, so that's a whole weekend. Maybe we'll get into a little bit of everything that went down over the weekend. We talked a little bit about Biden and what he did over the weekend, but there's a lot to discuss. Plus, there's more Supreme Court stuff that I want to get into. James O'Keefe, the founder of O'Keefe Media Group, he's going after Disney, he says. We're going to play a little teaser on that one. Plus, there's more on this Stephen A. Smith controversy with Caitlin Clark. He says she's a pawn. And then people that hit their heads and come back in a foreign accent. That's a real thing. We're going to look at it. We're going to make light of it a little bit. But I definitely want to get into that with you guys. So don't go anywhere. Keep it locked right here. Again, hour number 3, Open Phone America, time-honored tradition known as Open Phone America, started by Larry King, continued by Jim Bohannon, and continued now, maintained, right, by you all, the callers on this program. 833-4-VALDEZ. 4-VALDEZ. I got it right. I was having a Monday moment. And also, check out the website. If you want to stream the show, share it with somebody, you like one of the interviews, and you want somebody to hear it, just send them a link to the program. Rich Valdez, that's V-A-L-D-E-S, richvaldez.com, and you can check out all of our archives. They're all listed there, courtesy of Westwood One. Make sure you check it out. All right, folks, the music means I got to take a pause. We're coming right back. Gearing up for hour number 3, Open Phone America. Looking forward to chatting with you guys. Straight ahead, I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Monday night. We're live, we're national, and it's hour number 3, so give us a call, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. Sometimes I forget it, so if you forget it too, that's okay. And I want you to join the conversation. I welcome you to join it. Part of what I want to talk about was over the weekend, on Saturday, we had Joel Baboso Biden, and he, strutted his stuff out on stage with Jimmy Kimmel and Julia Roberts and George Clooney and a bunch of Hollywood elites. And they decided to have this big fundraiser trying to raise $30 million. I think they came in at $28 million, maybe a little more. Who knows? And Barack Obama was part of the star power that was there. Now, Barack Obama, former President Obama, of course, is a rock star for many people. And he was out there saying, we got to go with Joe, giving his endorsement. And it was largely effective, I would say, until it was the end of the show. And Joe Biden got into this little stare and he froze. And what's interesting about this is we've seen this time and again, right? Last week when he was with George Floyd's brother and his sister-in-law, they were all there grooving with Kamala Harris and Doug Emhoff and Billy Porter, the, I don't know if he's trans or just gay, I'm going to say LGBTQ entertainer. And everybody's there, clapping their hands and swaying side to side, feeling the music, and Joe Biden was frozen. The rigidity was real. Now, I'm not trying to criticize him, although I do criticize him on policy. I'm not going to criticize him on his health because, as many of you know, my dad fell down in front of the house in his 70s and suffered a traumatic brain injury. And my dad had so many of these symptoms that we see with Joe Baboso Biden. And one of them is what we see when he can't quite think of the right word and he gets frustrated and he'll yell or something after that. That's called aphasia. You can look it up. And he displays that on a regular basis. One of the other things that's very customary for people that have a traumatic brain injury, and I'm presuming there's some injured part of his brain from the trauma of the open brain surgery that he's had more than once. But another thing is seizures. People are prone to seizures, and these seizures are not always, full on like myoclonus type of seizure where you're shaking and whatnot and convulsing. Oftentimes there are seizures where the electricity in your brain just goes haywire. It's called a grand mal seizure or a absence seizure, and you just kind of stare into space and you get stuck and you need somebody to kind of pull you out of it. And that's exactly what Barack Obama did for Joe Biden. And I've done this many a time with my dad, who would just get fixated on things, whether sometimes in a happy thought where he would just smile, sometimes, in a lost thought where he was like, where am I? Who am I? Who are you? And Joe Biden has done this time and again. We saw him do it in Italy. We saw him do it in France. This is history repeating itself time and again. And he did it on the big stage in Hollywood. Joe Biden was grabbed by the wrist by President Obama, who then threw a friendly arm around his shoulder and guided him off stage, talking to him and guiding him, redirecting him as he went off stage left, I believe. And what, again, for me, it was a sad moment because, again, it reminded me of my old man. But I thought to myself, more sad, or even sadder, I should say, is how this reflects on America and how Joe Biden is really not capable of his duties as president. And I say that with just my own knowledge of dealing with somebody that's up in years who suffers from a traumatic brain injury. And my dad had, lots of moments where he relied on muscle memory, where he would go back to what he knew best, and he was very good and very fluent in those things. You know, when he would say things like, "Oh, you know, take me back." My dad, for a little while, was like, I'm going to say like a bouncer, right? Like the muscle, if you will, for like a small gambling operation that was in the back of a bodega on Nostrand Avenue in Brooklyn. And it was like a part-time gig. He also worked in a cardboard factory and as a doorman later on in his career. But I remember going to this place as a kid, never understanding what was really going on back there. I didn't go in there. I just stayed in the front part of the bodega. But anyway, the point of the story was there would be times when my dad in his late 70s where I'd say something and he'd get mad and say, "Hey, tell Rafi to grab the revolver." You know, like as if they were having trouble in their little gambling spot with those Joker poker machines. And I thought to myself, man, that's that muscle memory, right? My dad thinks we have trouble. Tell this guy to grab, the 6-shooter. And that's Joe Biden when he flashes his smile and squints and says things like, "Come on, man," or "ah," and he does all these things that he's used to doing to distract. And, if you don't know if you're voting for me or for Trump, then you ain't black. And, you know the thing, and the pressure, and all these things that all the symptoms are on display. But the White House says, no, not a chance. Joe Biden's the sharpest guy ever. He gets all his friends to come out and say he's the sharpest guy ever. And on top of that, what is interesting to me is you've got the actual White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre. She comes out and she says, listen, Obama let him off the stage because they're friends, not because he needed help. Listen to this.
There were 2 instances in recent days where leaders, former President Obama and Georgia Maloney of Italy, they physically put hands on the president to guide him and show him, give stage directions. Are they doing that on their own, or has anybody asked them to run the show like that?
First of all, let me spoke to the most recent, right? And as we saw on Saturday, President Obama's office put out a statement. So I would refer you to that statement about what was being accused in those by others. And he said this did not happen in the sense of what people were saying they were seeing, right? Or what was being falsely reported that they were seeing. Let's not forget, President Obama, President Biden have a relationship. They are friends. They're like family to each other. And I think that's what you saw. You saw the president put his hand on the back of President Biden, and they walked off the stage after taking questions or at an event taking questions from Jimmy Kimmel. That is what you saw.
So my question to you, America, do you believe this line of crapola that's being sold by Karine Jean-Pierre? Do you really think that it's just because they're buddy-buddy and they were doing kumbaya? Or was there more? I'm sure you've seen the video by now. If not, you can take a look at my Instagram or my Twitter. I tweeted the New York Post article with the video in it earlier today. I want to get your thoughts on this, and we're going to talk about Biden's mental health. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court. We're going to talk about James O'Keefe potentially infiltrating Disney. That sounds really juicy. And what happens when you hit your head so hard you come back speaking in a foreign accent, eh? Good day, mate. Well, we're going to talk about that as well. So don't go anywhere. The phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Mitch, I just have to ask you, I know I'm being wrapped, but I have to ask you about what Trump challenged Joe Biden on, which was he wants him to take a cognitive test. And we have a very short bit of time, but he tried to remember the name of his own doctor, Donald Trump, and he messed that up while he was challenging Mr. Biden. What do you make of that?
I think Donald Trump is a joke. I mean, when this guy, when his lips are moving, he's lying. And then when he tries to accuse somebody else of speaking improperly, he can't keep two thoughts in his mind. I would encourage Americans to go listen to Donald Trump's full speeches and try to put that word spaghetti together. And I wonder why anybody is questioning Joe Biden's mental acuity. Donald Trump can't string two sentences together. I mean, it's the biggest joke in the world. My president's going to show up on time, on task, and he is going to give it to Donald Trump next week. He shows up. He's doing his job.
That is Mitch Landrieu. He's the campaign co-chair for the Biden campaign. Of course he's going to say that. But does anybody really believe that Joe Biden's got it all together and he's doing fantastic and he's the sharpest guy ever? Right? Remember those clips that we had that say, no, this Biden is the sharpest tool in the shed, right? Now, Karine Jean-Pierre, she takes exception to this. And she says, no, there's no issue with Biden's mental acuity or anything like that. These videos where you see him looking, wandering, confused, this has nothing to do with reality. These are fake videos. It's been proven. Listen to this.
There seems to be a sort of rash of videos that have been edited to make the president appear especially frail or mentally confused. I'm wondering if the White House is especially worried about the fact that this appears to be a pattern that we're seeing more and more. Yeah,
and I think you all have called this the cheap fakes video, and that's exactly what they are. They are cheap fakes video. They are done in bad faith, and some of your news organization have been very clear, have stressed that these the right wing critics of the president have a credibility problem because of the fact checkers have repeatedly caught them pushing misinformation, disinformation, and so we see this, and this is something coming from your part of the world, calling them cheap fakes and misinformation. And I'll quote the Washington Post, where they wrote about this, and they said how Republicans use misleading videos to attack Biden in a 24-hour period. And to their credit, we have a conservative Washington Examiner did call them out as well, calling out the New York Post. Ironically, several recent cheap fakes actually attacked the president for thanking troops. That is what they're attacking the president for. Both in Normandy, this happened, and again in Italy. And I think that it tells you everything that we need to know about how desperate Republicans are here. And instead of talking about the president's performance in office, and what I mean by that is his legislative wins, what he's been able to do for the American people across the country, we're seeing these deep fakes, these manipulated videos. And it is, again, done in bad faith.
So that's Karine Jean-Pierre. Karine Jean-Pierre is going on and on about deep fakes, and I see you guys are calling in, so welcome to the program, 833-4-VALDEZ. We're getting to your calls momentarily. And I want to remind you of a clip from Joe Scarborough, right? Because he was going on and on about this on Friday, about the wandering and cheap fakes and vicious lies by the RNC. Listen to this.
Well, you know, Nika, it needs to be said. I mean, you have Joe Biden here with a schedule that would be brutal for anybody.
Oh my gosh.
Any president of any age going to Europe, a couple times on D-Day and spending 5 days in France, going over to the G7.
In the middle of the personal struggles.
In the middle of the personal struggles, the Hutter trial. And yesterday, I even critics were saying that he did a strong job, very good job representing the United States, even though, again, we have some cheap fakes that the RNC, once again, spreading vicious lies about Joe Biden. But that's who they are.
So are these cheap fakes, these deep fake cheap attacks, are they fake, phony, and fraud, as the White House and Mika and Joe are suggesting here, or is it them covering up for Biden and him being lost, shaking hands with the Easter Bunny all over the place? I don't know. I think it's more the latter, or I should say the former. Yeah, not the latter. It's definitely Biden shaking hands with the Easter Bunny again. I don't care what Jill Biden has to say about it. But I want to get your thoughts on this. Let's go to Al, Kalispell, Montana, KOFI. Al, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Hey, Rich. Thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Well, isn't it Gay Pride Month also?
It is. Men's Health Month, Gay Pride Month, Joe Biden forgetting where he is month. All sorts of things going on this month.
Yeah, and Obama's leading Biden off the stage by the hand in hand or over the shoulder. I mean,
what'd you think, they were going to go dance?
I don't know. You never know with a commie-crat.
The commie-crats. That's funny. Al, thanks for the call, brother. I appreciate it. KOFI in the building. Let's go a little bit further east to Pennsylvania and check in with Jim. Jim in Pittsburgh, KDKA. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. Great show. That guy, I just turned the show on, but that guy for Biden who says it's made up, he's either brain dead, came out of a coma, or what? No one believes that. Joe Biden can read a teleprompter. That's about it. I had friends of mine, a few of them that are on the left, and I go, look, I can get a 12-year-old to read a teleprompter. I go, wait till the 27th. I says, they're going to put him in a room for a week, and he'll hibernate, and they'll give him all the questions. And once he'll look in the camera, and I mean, you have to be really stupid to think that they made that up.
I listen. I don't believe they made anything up. I think that there may be some truth at times, and people's, the caption on social media might be somewhat misleading. Okay, but honestly, what they call misleading, I call satire, because usually that's what it is, right? If I say Joe is shaking hands with the Easter Bunny, and the Easter Bunny is clearly not in front of him, but he was next to him, and Joe seems confused and shaking hands in the air. The fake news fact checkers are going to say, oh, well, that's misleading. It's really not misleading. Just watch the video and you'll see exactly what's going on, Jim. And you're right. They're full of it. They say the video is fake, phony, and fraud. I say they're fake, phony, and fraud. Jim in Pittsburgh, KDKA, thank you for your call, sir. And I want to get one more in before we hit the pause. Let's go to Julie in Lansing, Michigan. Julie, listening to richvaldez.com. Go right ahead.
Hi. Thank you for putting me on. I didn't think I'd get on, but I really enjoy your show. I don't understand why they haven't invoked the 25th because it's a crisis and that man, it's elder abuse.
Yeah, I agree with you, Julie. Listen, I think the reason that nobody has moved for the 25th Amendment is because it would take somebody from the cabinet, and nobody in the cabinet wants that to happen. I don't know what their reasoning is. I guess it's because they don't believe Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris, as I like to call her, is not electable. And I would think that they're right. I think they have a better shot with Joe El Baboso Biden than they do with Kamala Harris, because she, in my opinion, doesn't have any gravitas. We have to remember she ran for president, and she did very, very poorly. The best highlight of her campaign for president was when she took a shot at Joe Biden for being a racist, and she called him out to the carpet for it. So I think you're right, Julie. We should be invoking the 25th Amendment to remove Biden, but I don't think there's anybody that would do it. Maybe Pete Buttigieg, but I don't think he can garner the support to get all his friends to say that, maybe he should become president, or obviously that won't happen. It would be Kamala Harris. So it just seems like a lose-lose, I think, and that's why they stick with Joe. Julie, the music means I got to go, but we're coming right back. Thank you for your call, by the way. Lansing, Michigan. And I wanted to play that audio from last week where the guy hits his head and comes back with a foreign accent. And there's a funny fake 911 call I'm going to play for you as well. Don't go anywhere. Rich Valdez, coming right back.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Bizarre medical mystery out of Palm Springs. Navy veteran wakes up one morning speaking only Swedish. No memory of his past. Doctors have been trying to figure out exactly what's behind the transformation, and ABC's Rob Nelson has all the details.
This is 61-year-old Johan Ek from Sweden. At least he thinks he is. His name is actually Michael Boatwright, an American Navy vet. In February, Boatwright woke up in this California emergency room in a Nordic state of mind, only speaking Swedish, unable to recognize his own face or even his son. Visibly emotional, he spoke to the desert sun through a translator.
The name I knew that I had, Johan Ek.
Police say Boatwright was found unconscious in this Palm Springs Motel 6, along with 4 forms of identification and a cell phone.
The cell phone, it contained several phone numbers, all of which were phone numbers from the country of China.
Records show Boatwright may be a graphic designer who taught English in Asia and apparently lived in Sweden for part of his life. After several weeks of tests, doctors diagnosed Boatwright with the neurological phenomenon transient global amnesia. Experts who have not treated Boatwright say his condition may be more psychiatric than neurological.
It can be very challenging to figure out that the cause of somebody's sometimes very dramatic symptoms is actually psychological.
It's not the first time a person has woken up speaking in a foreign tongue. In 2010, 51-year-old Kay Russell went to bed with a bad migraine and woke up speaking with a French accent. Her diagnosis, foreign accent syndrome.
It goes way, way, way beyond my voice.
Social workers are working to get him Social Security and veterans benefits and are looking for other living options in the meantime. For Good Morning America, Rob Nelson, ABC News, New York.
So that's from our archives. That's a throwback right there, going back 7 to 10 years. But this is fascinating. Why am I talking about an old news story about somebody who hit their head and came back speaking in Swedish? Because I thought it was fascinating, right? Because I was scrolling through Instagram over the weekend, or over the week, on Friday, actually, just before the weekend. And I came across a 911 call from a TV show called Paradise PD, which was about, all these zany first responders and, all satire. But it was just hysterical to me. And I decided I want to talk about this with you all because I want to see if you guys think it's as interesting as I do. And I want you to listen to this clip that we have. Check it out.
What's your emergency?
Oh,
you're speaking Spanish. Okay, I took a little in high school, so I got you. You're good.
No hablo español.
But you're hablaring español.
¿Qué está pasando?
I think what is pasando is that you're speaking Spanish.
No, habla español.
Okay, let me get this straight. You're saying you don't speak Spanish, but right now you are speaking Spanish.
Piensa que sí. Esta mañana me golpeé la cabeza en la puerta y ahora, ¿qué es español?
You don't know you're speaking Spanish.
Sí.
And before you hit your head, you used to speak English?
Sí.
Maybe try hitting yourself in the head again?
Mi cabeza?
Your cabeza.
Claro.
So, are you okay?
We heard a little bit. Wait a minute. That's not me.
All right.
Again, that's a satirical clip from Paradise PD. And it's fascinating the way this stuff happens. And I have another clip that I want to play for you in a little bit. But what they're talking about is something called foreign accent syndrome. And it happens when people come out of a coma or when they have a head trauma. And it's a condition where the way you talk shifts and changes in a way that's very sudden and very noticeable. And as the name would suggest, FAS, foreign accent syndrome, you start speaking in a foreign accent. And it also indicates, obviously, that something is disrupting your brain function. So I'm wondering, will Joe El Baboso Biden start speaking en español? Will that happen? I don't know. I would love to see that happen, though. I think that would be funny because, there's a clip of him saying, as a kid, I was raised by the Puerto Rican community. And I thought that was very funny. So anyway, I want to get to your calls on this and everything else. Let's go to Michael in La Crosse, Wisconsin, WIZM. Michael, do you think Joe Biden hits his head and comes back in a foreign accent? What say you?
Well, I don't know about that, but if he does, I think he'd be speaking in gibberish.
Yeah, I think he's already there.
Yeah, I also wanted to make a comment about that video of him being escorted off the stage
from what I can see.
Which stage are you talking about, with Obama?
Yeah, the one with Obama, yeah. My take on it is that I did see him kind of do a little bit of a squat. He thought maybe there was a toilet there, but really there wasn't. And by the time he realized he's still wearing a suit and there was no chair either, he poked out a turtle head and probably filled his Depends.
I laugh because of the way you told the story. But the reality is I've actually seen a different video of Biden. I didn't see him squatting in that one, but I will say I did see him squat twice in the video where he's in France with the soldiers and for the D-Day celebration, or anniversary commemoration, I should say. And he was about to greet some soldiers and went to Jill. He did the squat. He looked lost. He turned around. She walked him off to a different direction. He definitely looked like, again, something I'd seen in my personal life where, people lose control of their bowels and boom, there you go. And it looked exactly like that's what happened. And, of course, Macron stepping in and greeting the soldiers on behalf of the American president. It was a really... that was last week's, faux pas, if you will. So, yeah, I think that's a possibility. It could be that, he let one rip and got stuck, like little kids, right? You ever seen a little kid when they just freeze and they're there and they don't move, and it's like, uh-oh, they're pooping, and you know exactly what's going on. Sometimes they'll go to a corner or they'll turn around from the group. So maybe that is, in fact, what's happening. And I'm going to say, for the sake of fairness here, I don't believe that if you can't control your bowels, you can't be president. That part I'm not with. And the reason I'm not with it is because I think if you're in a wheelchair, FDR, stuff like that, I didn't like FDR's policies, but I think he was capable to be president. I don't think Biden's capable, and it's not because he can't control himself or because he wears Depends. I don't care if you wear Depends. If that's a part of life that comes. It doesn't affect your mental acuity. It might, throw you off your game a little bit because, you may not feel 100% anymore. But I can't say you can't be president wearing Depends. I think you can be president wearing Depends. What you can't be president is not having a clear mind. And sadly, that's where Joe El Baboso Biden is. Michael in La Crosse, Wisconsin, thank you for your call. Big shout out to WIZM. And we continue with your calls and more on Joe Biden, the fundraiser, his mental acuity, everything that's going on in his brain, plus this topic I'd like to get your thoughts on with people hitting their heads and coming back with a foreign accent. Do you know anybody this has happened to? Has it happened to you? Have you ever heard of this happening? Because I never met anybody that this actually happened to, but it's a real phenomena. And when we come back, you're going to hear about a teenager who hit his head and came back. Another one, hablando español. So don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The Metro teenager is struggling to recover from a severe concussion. His parents say when he woke up, though, he was speaking only Spanish, a language he had never spoken fluently before. Channel 2's Gwinnett County Bureau Chief live in Gwinnett County on this with some video of the incident. And Tony, why his parents want to warn everyone about the dangers of concussions.
Hey, Justin, this was the Brookwood High student's third concussion playing soccer. He says the sport is his passion. He wants to play it professionally, but everything's unclear right now. He can't go to school, his family's struggling, and they don't know what the total impact is. What do you remember about that game?
Not really anything.
This is the collision late last month that has turned Ruben Anselmo's life upside down. He was playing goalie for an elite Gwinnett County-based national team when he dove for the ball. Another player kicked him in the head. Ruben's coach says the teenager stopped breathing several times.
I was in shock and panic, right? And then he would come back, then he start throwing up. It was a sequence of things that I've never seen, really. It was bad.
You thought you might lose him there?
I thought I might lose him there.
Ruben was airlifted to Atlanta Medical, where he spent several days in a coma.
Our life has changed through this process.
And when he did wake up, his parents say he spoke only in Spanish at first, a language he'd never spoken fluently before. For now, Ruben stays at home, twirling a ball and watching games on TV.
Sometimes I daze out. Sometimes, I feel like I'm not there, but I am.
He hopes one day to be back on the pitch himself. And when he does return, his coach wants him and every other goalie to wear a helmet.
Everybody's waiting till that big thing happen before they start wearing the mask. We should try to prevent these things from happening earlier.
Live in Gwinnett County, Tony Thomas, Channel 2 Action News.
So there's another one. Again, real story from the archives, about 10 years old, that story, but corroborates the funny 911 clip that we heard in the previous segment. And I'm wondering, how long is it before Joe El Baboso Biden starts speaking a foreign language? Probably Chinese or Iranian, right? Because that seems to be who he's sold out to. But let's get your thoughts on this. I want to go to John in Wilmer, Minnesota on KWLM giving us a call. John, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I was just wondering, several years ago when Hillary Clinton was running for the presidential spot there, I wonder if we didn't witness that when she suddenly started speaking with a southern drawl and she was no way tired. I think it was on a campaign stop down the southern part of the country. Just thinking on that.
You know who else did that not too long ago? My least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, AOC, all-out crazy herself, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She was at a National Action Network. That is the group led by Al Sharpton. And she just started sounding like a Southern person. And this was in Brooklyn, New York. But it was the funniest thing, just like Hillary. And Hillary did go a step further because she literally busted out a thing of hot sauce from her pocketbook, right? Saying she never leaves home without her hot sauce. And that was probably the biggest fake, phony, fraud thing that we'd seen Hillary do in at least in a long time. Maybe it might have been her all-time greatest hits. But John, I think you're spot on here. She might have been hit with the foreign accent syndrome from hitting her head. Maybe she hit heads with Joe El Baboso Biden. Now, John, before we let you go, I want you to weigh in on how do you think the debates are going to go? And what do you think is the ultimate outcome of the 24 election?
I'm fully expecting they'll mysteriously turn and start favoring Joe down the home stretch. And I just think that it's going to be a planned sudden switch to favor Joe than to strengthen him. And I think
what would you say, the polls or the actual votes?
The polls. I think the vote.
What do you think happens on Election Day, though? Do you think Trump wins or Biden wins?
I believe Trump will win.
Yeah, good to hear that. All right, John in Wilmar, Minnesota, KWLM. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Let us continue. Diane, Chicago, Illinois, WGN. Diane, go right ahead.
Hello, Rich.
Hi.
Speaking of vice president, I think that it will depend on vice president selection for Trump. So this is, I think, very important because that's going to be a debate. You know, remember Pence and Timothy Kaine, and that they have a vice presidential debate. So that is important because. And then I wanted to say about I didn't see this yet. I'll have to go to the computer at the library and watch the YouTube of the star-studded fundraising thing because, of course, I heard it on the news and everything and in the paper and that. But so apparently, this is such an elitist thing. You know what? It strikes the average person. If I were a spokesman for the common Joe, which I'm not, and I'm not purporting to be, but if I were, I think the common person is concerned about, you know, the common person is left out on on these elitist, godlike, from the Mount Vesuvius, them giving the stars, and yet they can't resist the Democratic Party and a lot of politicians in general. They can't resist that money. Now, money it's so weird that there's so much money involved, and where does that money literally go? Like I was telling your producer, back in the day of precinct captains, well, they gave a turkey to someone. They bought a vote, right, or something like that. So what do they do with that money? What's the need? What's the big need for a constant fundraising? And even on Twitter and stuff, I get things from people from, like, I don't even know, I'll get it and I'll block it or whatever. You get these things that people are soliciting for money, and I'm talking to Republicans because I'm a Republican. And I don't know, it doesn't make any difference. You get anything, but because of the people I follow, I suppose I get. But I get these things that this is a little bit offensive because we're so much in like forgotten, I say the common person paying rent, living. Issues are crime, voter ID, common sense, peace on earth, some kind of getting away from these wars. Right. But I think he should pick a man. Do not pick a female, because it'll be all this issue about Alabama with the intrauterine thing. That'll be that controversy that's going on now. That's probably going to make its way, I think, right to the Supreme Court, I think. Wouldn't you think? Anyway, that Alabama thing. I've never been married, so I'm against abortion. And I think the freezing of embryos, where in the world do we begin with this kind of thing? Can people adopt? Of course, it's easy for me to say, and I can't relate to people, wanting a child, but I'm just saying. But everything becomes, if it's a woman candidate, if it's a woman vice president, the distraction will be away from those other issues. You see what I'm saying? That's
a possibility, Diane. I think two things, right? Number one, the fundraising aspect of politics. And again, you've been observing politics for a long time. And I'm pretty sure you've always seen fundraising. I think what you're saying is that you're seeing more fundraising now than you have in the past. I think you're right. With inflation, they have to pay more for ads, more for staff, more for everything. So I think they're raising more money now than they've raised in the past. That's for sure. And there's an old saying about Washington that it's the mother's milk of politics, right? Fundraising, cash, is the mother's milk of politics. And that's the reality. And whether it's AIPAC, like we were talking about earlier, that lobby, or any other lobby, like the pro-Hamas lobbies that are, disguised as whatever front group Iran has. These groups, they all are putting money into somebody's pocket to try and push their agenda. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles in Washington. Diane, thank you for the call from the legendary WGN in Chicago, Illinois. Folks, we're coming right back. My final thoughts and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, we are back. Rich Valdez here with you live till 1 a.m. Eastern time. And in the moments that we have remaining, I want to share something with you. There's every now and again a critique that I'll get on social media. And I got one the other day, and I don't always write back because, there's an old saying, don't feed the trolls because they'll keep coming back for more. So a guy named Dale Wagner from the Ozarks. Dale, if you're listening, shout out to you and your snide remark. He says, you telling all book writers, which I guess are called authors, that they are a gentleman and a scholar has become cheap sounding. And my response to him was, shoot, I was hoping to impress you with more luxuriant or highbrow commentary to satisfy your upper crust sensibilities, Dale. Lamentably, I've failed. It's going to be tough for me to live this down, but I'm going to do my best to get over it. Thanks again for tuning in and for your in-depth critical and contribution to our national conversation. Godspeed. And he thought I was serious and that I wasn't being a wise guy. Dale, it was sarcasm. I was being fresh. Anyway, folks, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm Rich Valdez.